It was a rainy evening. I was sitting on the balcony, looking at the distant horizon and trying to understand my journey. I was well acquainted with the proverb, "Time flies," but this flying time had given me everything I had wished for. Indeed, I didn't want her to know my cordial expectations. I hoped her dream of listening to those three words wouldn't get any expression, and I wanted her to get angry. While I was thinking about these, she brought 2 cups of coffee. I looked at her, raising my eyebrows a little, but her eyes were cool and normal. She behaved like she was callous about the thing, but her silence intensified my desperation. I held her left hand tightly, sitting in front of her chair. I said, "Please tell me who had said that to you." "It is better not to know everything," her simple and direct reply. I looked directly into her eyes angrily. Within a few seconds, she lowered her eyes and started looking around. I thought I would not leave her until she gave me my answer. But my masculine pride dominated me, and I got annoyed. When I loosened my grip, she smiled at me. It increased my irritation. I hadn't talked to her since then. I ignored her persistent attempts. I thought of winning the battle against her this time. But my frustration was compounded by her glittering, smiley eyes. At about 10:30, I entered the room. I had promised myself that I would not talk to her unless she answered my question. But her sleepy, sacred face melted the jolt in my heart. It seemed that I would forget my pledge. Lying on bed, I looked at her face, and that innocent, smiley face took me 20 years back. Standing at the junction, I was waiting for my train. I was determined. I must not yield before her. My mind told me, "She hasn't got married, but you are about to." It was totally unacceptable to me. I cried out, "I mustn't lose to you." Possibly my words were loud enough to annoy the surrounding people. They looked at me angrily. The train arrived and I got in. But to my astonishment, I found the compartment completely empty. Thinking of the long journey, I turned off the lights and made myself comfortable on a seat. But while my endeavor to sleep failed miserably, I started looking around. At a little distance, a glittering element drew my attention. Out of curiosity, I walked towards it and picked it up. To my great surprise, it was a nose ring. This instance could be interpreted many ways, but my straightforward mind reached the conclusion immediately. I thought it belonged to a lady passenger who forgot her nose ring. But on my return from that seat to the one where I sat, my feet struck something. In the dark, it was not visible clearly, as the darkness obscured it, but I realized it was a suitcase. I became quite suspicious and also wanted to soothe my curiosity. "What can be in this trunk?" I whispered. "Should I open this or just leave it?" The discovery of this trunk created a deep confusion in me. Then, unknowingly, I shouted, "Is anyone here? Whose luggage is this?" But I understand these were my questions that infringed the tranquility of the compartment. My perseverance was undergoing a test. I submitted before my curiosity. I opened the trunk. But the things I found filled me with pity for that absent-minded lady passenger. I started looking for any indications that could help me decipher her address, and I could send her trunk back to her. But my inexperienced hands roughly scattered her nicely folded and arranged garments. My concentration was so deeply invested in searching her address that I failed to hear the rattling sound of the door. I was kneeling while doing it. But a sharp, ferocious, melodious roar deviated my attention. I looked back at her, but I didn't have the courage to turn away my gaze. It fascinated me. A fairy in a colorful bridal look was looking at me fiercely. Although her face was not clearly visible, but I could sense her beauty. I was hesitant and hoping to justify my misdemeanor, but her indignant eyes made me completely speechless. "Why are you stealing my clothes? Leave this now, otherwise I'll call the police." A rude but still melodious voice threw this to me. Before I could prepare myself to clarify everything, her voice struck me. It seemed to me that I knew that voice very well. While I was trying to know the known voice, she turned on the switch. In that artificial light, too, I could see the face that my heart wasn't ready to forget. It seemed I was dreaming. My heartbeat skyrocketed for a sudden. I was at a loss for words. I was looking at her almost like a possessed one, but her penetrating words brought me to reality. "Oh, it's you," a mocking mouth said. "Why not? When you failed in your absurd ambition, then this is the only profession you could pursue." Her words were like needles that pricked me deep, but I was trying to regain my consciousness. Under the glance of a pair of sharp eyes, I somehow mustered the courage to reply to her. I'm sorry, but you are under the false impression. I wasn't stealing your garments. While I was sleeping in my couch, a glittering element drew my attention, and I found this. I showed her the nose ring, but it made her more frustrated. She immediately pelted this at me. You already have stolen my nose ring. I have to believe you have got really quite experienced hands for your profession. Her consecutive contemptuous verbal arrows made me completely uncomfortable. I got enraged, but I didn't have the spine to reply to her anymore. I don't know why, but still her eyes don't let me be the one who I want to be. Her one gaze is enough to express her authorization or rejection. I can't go beyond that. I came back to my seat, leaned against the window panes, and started looking outside. A turbulence was at its severe stage in my mind, but I was reluctant to reflect that outward. I don't want to say whether it was deliberate or non-deliberate, but our frequent eye contact started sharing the grievances. And to my astonishment, I could read the messages those fierce eyes delivered to me. I sensed the immense huff accumulated in those indignant eyes. But also I felt that one extraordinary happiness was radiant in her. But her persistent efforts to suppress them seemed to betray her and were not ready to help her hiding that in. I wanted to commence a conversation with her, but I was afraid enough to begin. I was struggling to cope up with the situation. And then I thought it was my mistake, so I should apologize to her. But pride was a constraint for me. That pride raised a question. Why do you have to apologize to her all the time? Can't she do that once? Indeed, with the help of that pride, I stopped myself from initiating a conversation with her. But within a few minutes, this pride started fading away. I grew impatient. Without its help, I can't hold myself. But at last, that pride forsook me. I couldn't hold myself longer. Where are you going? I asked simply. A hostile and dense look was thrown at me. Mind your own business. A sharp reply was returned. Why are you behaving rudely with me? I'm getting hurt. I tried to attack her emotionally, but the following silence of her mystified my anticipated answer. Of course, that arrogance was taking a toll on me. I thought of leaving the compartment, but the thought of her being alone in the compartment compelled me to abrogate my plan. While I was struggling to sort out any option so that I could finish the journey with her amicably, a fresh aroma of nicely cooked mutton filled the compartment. I found that she opened her tiffin box, and it had mutton and chapatis in it. She arranged those foods cautiously. I didn't know why the sight aroused my hunger. To avoid asking her for food, I tried to be prejudicial about her. But again, I was disappointed at my two other beings, my heart and mind. These two lodged strong protests. I retreated. I didn't know why, but I was happy. To know whether she was the same kind to me or not, I shamelessly asked, Risha, I'm hungry. Can you please share a little food? This time, though I didn't expect, a quite soft but still bitter voice replied, I'm an Indian woman. An Indian woman cooks food for her husband and family, not for any foreigner. I realized she was avenging what I had told her on that day. I smiled at her childish demeanor. At that time we were young, but now we are matured. But still she believes in retaliation. I stammered. I didn't have any problem with her retaliation. Her anger gives her an indescribable charm, and I can admire her beauty throughout my life. Leaving any hope of getting a share of her food, I tried to relive the past. But I can't recall exactly how many minutes later I smelled something nearby, and my inspection bore me a tiffin box filled with mutton and more than 10 chapatis. I looked at her eagerly, but I saw she was having food like nothing had happened. I didn't want to waste my time to taste the food cooked by her. I swallowed the shared food, and it seemed to me as an anecdote. It relieved me of all types of burdens. I thought I should express my gratitude to her since she had shared her food with me. But the inner me was reluctant to do that, and I realized it had started thinking of her as my personal property. It declared her as my thing. I protested at the usage of thing for her, but my inner me was totally callous to my protest. Without any further confusion, I planned for an informal tiffin box returning strategy. I was happy with my innovative mind. First, I thought I would return her that unclean tiffin box, but I was hesitant. Somehow I went near her and told her, "Here's your tiffin box." I didn't know why, but I went a step forward. I became quite assertive. I said, "It's not washed, you know it well, so do that." I was preparing for a fierce and bitter reply, but to my astonishment, a more normal and soft voice answered, "Haven't I told you I would like to work for my family? Why will I work for any stranger?" Unknowingly, it enraged me. I asked furiously, "I'm a stranger to you. Pray to God, as I haven't rewarded you a slap." By saying so, even I myself was in shock at my daring. But when a pair of cold and sharp eyes looked at me, I started losing my nerves. Unintentionally, I murmured, "I'm sorry." That day I got to know that even a pair of eyes were capable enough to control my speech. But truly speaking, I was making mistakes in understanding my own instincts during her presence. I tried to reassure myself of my masculine pride. I went back to my seat and a thought deepened in me. I sought to rediscover myself. But the more time I did, her portrait started appearing more legibly by my side. I couldn't hold myself from asking her a few questions, but at the same time, I was afraid of her reply. I mustered enough courage to initiate the talk. I asked, "How are you?" She said, "I usually don't talk to strangers, and my situation should be expressed to the dearest one, not to a stranger like you." After getting this answer, I decided not to ask her any questions, but inner me was ready to be shameless, only to listen to her talking. For a few minutes, the compartment was totally tranquil. Inside me, a high tide was persistently forcing me to make her talk. At a moment, everything appeared in front of me, and I was convinced that her presence was instigating my inner self. I didn't want to be provoked. I didn't want to submit before her, but I wanted to perpetuate that moment. I wanted the clock to stop there. I was ready to tolerate her annoyance forever, but a massive convergence of past, present, and future brought a drop of tear rolled down my cheeks. At the same moment, my nose smelt a fragrance I knew very well. My closed eyes sensed the presence of someone. I opened my eyes. Yes, it was her. My heart started pounding happily when she sat beside me. She asked, "Why are you running away from home?" I was shocked. I thought, how could she know about it? But I couldn't suppress my feelings for her. I reminded her of the promise we had made during our days. I testified that I was not ready to get married because I had to free my heart from her, but it was hard for a man like me. After listening to my words, she said, "Why don't you get married? Those promises were futile and childish. You could neglect those." I became speechless. I thought, you might think about those as futile, but those pledges are not letting me survive without you. Her eyes were fixed at me. I didn't know what had happened to me, but I made a mistake. Without any pretension, I assertively held her hand. Possibly the fear of losing her again had hastened my endeavor. I told her, "I'm taking my things to my house. I don't need anyone's consent for this." I held her hand tightly and descended on the next station. While I had been bringing my newly acquired property, I was being reproached sweetly. But I was deaf. On reaching home, I tried to infer everything, but one question, how did she know about my fleeing from home? She never answered me. When I forced her to answer, she would say, "It's better not knowing something, otherwise she would give me other excuses." I know she knows the answer but will never tell me, because she likes keeping me in my dreams, and dreams never reveal everything. I knew she was not sleeping, because she knew very well that I couldn't sleep without talking to her. But her pretension was justified because she had hidden all my marriage cards. And yes, I don't have any issues with it.